Hi everyone, this is Maureen Wong for yournextstamp.com. Today I have a start to finish video for you on this card that I made, and this was using the ugly sweater and dies, and this sweater, if you can see, it's actually made out of felt, and I did some Copic coloring on the felt to get the wreath that color. And I actually did a video before about Copic coloring on felt, but you might have missed it, so I decided to do another one, and that one was kind of a long time ago. But it was also with this ugly sweater set, and I've noticed that ugly sweater stamp sets are all the rage this holiday season. So I wanted to bring back this old favorite of ours from Your Next Stamp. So I hope you'll stay with me and watch my video. Let's get started. Okay, so to start with, we're going to need the ugly sweater and dies, matching dies set from Your Next Stamp. Sorry about the glare, but we're going to be using this, the round neck sweater. Let me take that out. Today we're going to be using the round neck sweater because it goes better with the larger images, because the V-neck comes down kind of far. You'd have to position these, for example, the reindeer head, you'd have to position it kind of far down to get away from that V. So I'm using the round neck sweater. And then I'm also going to be using the wreath. You can see here. Oh, sorry. Here's the wreath. Okay, so what I did was I got the matching die set. It's a set of 4 dies. The sweater, the reindeer head, the wreath, and a teddy bear. And I already went ahead and die cut the sweater out of white felt. And our dies cut very nicely through felt, good quality felt. If you get the really cheap craft store kind of felt, sometimes it might take a couple passes through and it doesn't cut as well. So I would recommend you get kind of a better quality of felt than the really cheap craft store stuff. So I've already cut my sweater, like I said, and then what I'm going to use is a Martha Stewart footed stamp block. I put my sweater on there, and then the ink that I'm using to stamp on the felt is this graphite black Brilliance pigment ink pad from Sukineko. And the reason why I chose this is because I know it can stamp on the felt, and also it's Copic compatible. I actually used to use this as my go-to ink for Copics before I started using the Memento ink, so I know that it works with the felt and with the Copic markers, and that's why I use it. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my sweater. And I want to make sure it's really well inked, but at the same time I want to make sure I don't have any blobs of ink. I just re-inked the stamp pad, so there might be little blobs, and what I'm going to do is test it out on a piece of scrap paper first. That's one way you can tell, and that actually stamped really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and ink that up again. And again, you want to make sure it's inked really well and evenly. You don't want to squish down your pad. These pigment ink pads are kind of squishy, and you might be inclined to squish it down to get a better inking, but you'll actually get ink in the crevices of your stamp, and that's not going to look as good. Sorry if I was out of frame right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to position this over my sweater and stamp it down. With firm, even pressure, and I'm going to carefully peel that off, and you can see I got a really nice impression on my sweater. Now I'm going to, let me get this out of the way. I'm not going to bother to clean it off right now. But I'm going to get my wreath, and again I want that inked up really nicely. But again, don't press. You don't want to get the ink gooped up in the crevices. You just want a nice even coat. And then I'm going to try and center that in the middle of my sweater. And again, really firm, even pressure. And I'm holding down a little bit longer, hoping that the ink will kind of transfer into the felt. And let me again carefully peel that off. And that's a great impression of the wreath. Now, what I'm going to do is set this aside to dry. I've actually tried coloring it before, right after I've stamped it, and Brilliance does take a little while to dry, so if I went and colored it now with my Copics, it would definitely smear. So I'm going to set that aside to dry for a little while, and I'm going to show you the rest of my card. For my card base, I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white cardstock base. I have a piece of this red wood grain pattern paper that is 3 inches by 3 3/4, and then I have 2 strips of nice matching pattern papers from the same paper pad, and they are 1 inch by 4 1/4 inches wide. And what I'm going to do is I am actually using a sketch. I usually go off of sketches, and my favorite sketches are from challenge blogs. So this one is from Freshly Made Sketches. Here it is. And I'm actually turning it this way. And so you can see my focal panel has rounded edges. So what I'm going to do is take my crocodile, and I have the 1/2 inch side up. There we go. And I'm going to round the top, the corners of the top, and there I have this panel that matches the sketch. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp my sentiment on this green and blue dotted piece. So I'm going to go back to my stamp set. And this one fits perfectly. It says, "Don we now our ugly sweaters, fa la 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 la." That is just so funny. And I'm gonna stick it down to my stamp block. And this time I don't need to use the Brilliance. My go-to for stamping sentiments is the Onyx Black VersaFine archival ink pad. I'm going to ink that up really nicely, and then I'm going to stamp that down on my strip, centering it as best as I can. And let's see if that came out. Oh, that came out perfect. Okay, let me set that sentiment aside. And actually VersaFine does take a little while to dry too. It says right on the container that it's an instant dry pigment ink, but I have found that it's not actually instant drying. I have smeared a lot of things that I've stamped with VersaFine, so better safe than sorry. I'm just gonna set this on the side and come back to that later. And now let me just take a break and let everything thoroughly dry, and I'll clean off my workspace and we'll get right back into it. Okay, I'm back and my sweater is dry, and I have a scrap piece of the same white felt. I did a test with the colors that I thought I might like to use, and they were just the right colors for me. So I'm going with G07 and R27. I'm just making 2 colors for my wreath. You can make the bow and the baubles a different color if you want. That's completely up to you. So here we go. When you're coloring with Copics on felt, you're not going to be doing a brushing, stroking motion. I usually do just like a tapping. Motion like this. Can you see that? I'm just tapping the color into the felt, and I'm being very careful not to go too close to the lines for a very long amount of time, like pressing it down, because the ink will just seep right out of the lines if you hold the pen down too long. So I'm just lightly dabbing it to get the color on. And you can see the felt takes the color very nicely. Especially, of course, because this is white felt. But I've actually used Copics on colored felt, and they still come out very nicely. So there is my G07 done. And you just give that a second to dry, and it only takes a second. And then I'm going to come back in with my R27, and you know, reds are notorious for bleeding, so I'm going to be even more careful with this as I'm dotting into my balls. I'm going to be very careful not to go outside of the lines, not to push too much color in there. And then I'm going to do my bow. And you can see there's no sophisticated blending or anything of this. Oh, I missed one. It's just very, very basic coloring. So there is the finished sweater. You can see how nicely it took the Copic coloring. And now what I'm going to do is assemble my card. So again, I have my card base, my pattern paper pieces, and I'm just going to line everything up and figure out how I want it according to my sketch. Somewhere around there. And that's actually a little bit too low, so I'm going to move it up a little bit. And there, that looks about right. So I'm going to come in with my ATG gun and kind of, let's take this piece out. And we can leave this green one in place while we adhere the blue one, so we know exactly where that blue one is supposed to go. Right there. Oops, and I did it really, really crooked. So good thing I didn't press down too hard on that. And let me see. Yes, that looks straighter. Okay. Next comes the red piece, and I want that sticking out a very certain amount below the green. So actually what I'm going to do with this piece is put the adhesive on and very carefully kind of fit it where I want it. And don't press down until it's where you want it to be. And there we go. And now for our green stripe. And that's going to go right under the blue stripe. Okay, and now to adhere the sweater, the felt sweater, I just used plain old tacky glue, and I dot it on the back. You don't want it to be too goopy. So there we go. And let's position that where I want it. Lightly press down, and once that glue dries, that will be on there for good. So there is the finished card, and I hope you enjoyed this start to finish video, and we'll see you over at yournextstamp.com. Thanks for watching.